And we're live. This is just that easy.
Nice.
Welcome, Richard. Pop these open.
Our non-alcoholic athletic brewing co. I hope you like these.
I've had them before.
Oh, okay.
There's a bar in Goshen that carries these.
I just went and spilled it on myself.
You're
so.
fine. And I didn't have it on camera, so you're good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't count.
It'll just look like I'm lactating when you switch the camera to me.
Yeah, these are nice.
I think these are some of the closest non-alcoholic beers you can get to like a beer, but I think it's because it's an IPA and you seem to be able to make non-alcoholic IPAs because even in an IPA, all you really taste are all the hops anyway.
Right.
So it's like it hides it well.
65 calories of hops. I dig it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like I'm drinking a beer, but
Yeah.
yeah.
But you'd have to drink like 100 of them to get a buzz, you know.
Really? Yeah, it's less than 1%.
Less than 0.5%.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, there's more alcoholic content in kombucha.
Yeah.
Than probably this. So that's nice. Probably even more like Juicy Juice has more alcoholic content than
probably. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So
cool. Thank you. Thank you for letting me come into your house and podcast. It's interesting because there's been like a number of times we've talked about podcasting and it just keeps on coming up. I'm like, I need to talk to Richard. And I never maybe followed through or figured it out, but here we are. We're doing it. It's live.
Yeah,
it's real.
Yeah, I'm excited to do it. I mean, I've been, like you said, been thinking about podcasting together.
Yeah.
I remember on at least a couple occasions, talking about it. But now we're actually doing it. So
it's real.
That's what really counts.
Yeah. I've known you for probably since 2010, I think is when we met. Maybe 2011. When did you go we met at Grace.
Yeah. But
were you a year younger than me? I started in 2010, the fall of 2010.
I also started the fall of 2010.
Okay.
So we were in the same class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you were in Beta 3, I believe.
Beta 3 South.
Beta 1 South. And so that's where I first met you.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Living that beta life.
Yeah. Those were, I mean, for as much as I wouldn't want to go back to Grace, maybe those were pretty good years for as much as Grace was.
Grace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those were pretty good years. Those were fun. I would probably go do them again. Just they're good memories anyway. It's kind of silly as Grace was to be at. You make the best out of it, and had a good time, good enough time.
Right. Yeah.
The thing I took away the most from Grace was just friends and people and just junk we got up to. Getting in trouble, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I've still got pretty good friendships from Grace, which is nice. You don't know what is going to happen when you leave. I left and you have a whole handful of friends, but then the ones you stay in contact with that just shakes out after time, and that's cool. Yeah.
Yep. It's kind of interesting. Jay,
our buddy, mutual buddy, he's been on the podcast.
Okay, yeah. So he was a year ahead of us, and he's somebody that I talk to probably the most frequently of anybody from Grace, you know? So that's just kind of an interesting way that shook out, because I wouldn't say at Grace we hung out a ton. I mean, he was on Beta 3 South too. He was Beta 3 North. So we definitely hung out in the Beta crowd, but then he moved out of the dorm that following year. And so we crossed paths at when we'd go over to Philadelphia with it, which isn't there anymore.
Oh, really?
Didn't they
realize? I don't know. I haven't been back. I told you when I get into Warsaw,
they
I shiver a little and freak out a little bit.
Yeah, they took that building down a few years ago. But
really?
But yeah, so
it was old.
Yeah.
It
was pretty jank.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just interesting, and I keep in touch with, my former roommates a little bit, but I like I said, I see Jay probably the most of anybody. Of course, he lives a couple blocks away, so it's more convenient. But I lived with Jay for several years, probably 3 or 4 after Grace. So
gotcha.
And then lived with Travis name is blanking.
Yeah, I'm thinking Travis Scott, but it's not. That's the singer. I know Travis Thomas.
No,
Travis. He does the washing, right?
Did car wash.
Car wash. Travis
Jones.
Yeah.
I can't believe I forgot his name. Travis Jones. Sorry, Travis. Big time. but I lived with him for like a super long time. I never call him Travis Jones. That's why
Right.
I call him Travis.
Right.
So, but yeah, we lived together then for several years. But he's moving away now. He's moving to Indianapolis, and
Oh, really?
yeah, he's getting married. So
Yeah, I saw something on the social medias.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys live Did you guys live in Yellow House, or where was?
we lived in this little house. No, it wasn't Yellow House, but it was back there.
Okay.
Yeah, it was back there, but it was kind of down the street a little bit and around the corner.
Okay.
It's basically the same size and
Yeah.
so, same area.
Okay.
We lived all right on the train tracks, basically.
Really?
Yeah.
Those same tracks that go to OMCC,
Mm-hmm.
MCC. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So lived with those guys for a while, and they're probably the ones I keep in touch with the most.
Yeah.
So,
It's crazy how that. So, and we have mutual. We are mutual friends. We go to there's different parties that will happen where once a year we get together with Jake Crone and Ben and Jay and Lincoln, and so it's cool to see you at those events. And then even more recently, there's like my wife's best friend is related to your wife, and and there's a family somehow.
that's kind of the wildest thing, right? Like, how small the world really is, because they're people like I didn't know before, right? Like,
right.
I met Grace, my wife, online, and just so happened to, we got married, obviously, but just getting connected with that family, that through that connection, you're actually connected then to that family in a different indirect way, but it's that same family that neither of us, would have ever met.
Right.
But they're up there doing their thing, and it's kind of wild because it's a big family and they're all really like close and that kind of thing. So
it's we both went to a wedding, and I'm like, dude, what's up, Richard? It was crazy. It's just
I totally forgot. I saw you, and then I was like, what the heck is Tim doing here? And then Grace reminded me, like, oh yeah, his wife is friends with Justin's wife, and I was like, oh yeah,
dude, Justin's so cool too.
He's a unique guy.
Yeah, I want someday I'll have him on the podcast. Maybe when he can talk about his adventures, because he's got some adventures that I don't know if he can talk about right now. But he's nuts.
Does some interesting stuff. He's a unique guy for sure.
Yeah,
which is kind of funny because like his parents are not like
yeah,
it's kind of funny.
Totally.
And then like his older sister is not quite like that. His younger sister I don't know as well.
Is that Kate? Or
Katie is his younger sister.
Okay,
his older sister is Liz, and that whole family dynamic is just really interesting. Everybody is really kind of unique.
Yeah,
like his dad's a professor at Notre Dame, and he's pretty soft spoken guy, tends to be, but he's really interesting and very intellectual, and he's like he's in the philosophy department or something like that, some science. But it's just really interesting. Then there's Justin, who's like hardcore, Marine type, just kind of funny.
Yeah.
So,
well, Alice and I visited them a year or two ago in California where they live, and Kate was there, or Katie was there, and so we went rock climbing together, and so got to kind of know both of them, and it's just I love it. So
they're interesting, but it's a kind of an interesting connection that we have, kind of random, seemingly random, but all happened.
It all ties together in some way, right?
Right. Yeah. So
and from the stories, from the times that we've hung out, there's different things. I'm like, man, this would be great to talk about. I really, and we're connected on Twitter. That's another one of those pieces. And I see a lot of the videos and stuff you're creating.
Yeah.
And I saw something on Twitter the other day where Tanner Joy was talking about Amazon and how you shouldn't participate in Prime Day.
Yeah.
And then you had a nice little rebuttal. And I thought that was just funny because I'm seeing two people interacting with this thing that we all use and having two different experiences, but both very plugged into the same experience. And so I don't know if I want to talk about that yet, but I would like to walk towards that, how you got there, because what you do is really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, but I know like how we just talked about how, two different worlds, we weren't ever connected with it. There's a path that you've walked down to get where you're at.
For sure.
And I think that story is interesting. So,
I mean, we can start after, immediately from Grace. So when I was at Grace and after Grace, I was trying to get into the Navy, and where I grew up, where I lived, like after Grace, I moved back home and was doing construction, doing tile, laying tile and stuff like that. So
Prince Tucky.
Yeah. And that's a really small town, and lived out in the middle of nowhere. Didn't have any friends there or anything like that because my best friend lived in Louisville at the time. So, I was just working, sitting in my parents' house. And I was trying to do this, trying to get in the Navy, and I just didn't have anywhere to like work out. I mean, I lived out in the country, so I basically could run on the gravel roads and, do push-ups and stuff like that. But I needed to be able to swim and do a bunch of other stuff. I didn't have a gym or anything like that. There was a gym there, but, I got to drive a half hour to go to the gym every day. Like it just wasn't that reasonable. So I knew Jay lived close to Grace, and I knew I could get a free gym membership by going to Grace.
Yeah.
And when I was at college, I would use the high school because for 50 cents, you could use their lap pool.
Oh, that's nice.
Every night or something like that, or every other night or something like that. So my plan was, when I reached out to Jay, they didn't have any room at the house. So my plan was actually to move and live out of my truck so I could use the shower and the gym at Grace. And then I would work because I found a job at a factory basically here in Warsaw. And so I was like, I could, I'd go to work, and then I'd kind of just spend the rest of my time, getting in shape and, living out of my truck until I can find a place to live, because I was looking for places to rent. But I was like,
and be around friends, family, and something to do.
Yeah,
not family, friends and people, and a familiar place, and then
I couldn't live at home any longer. It was just driving me nuts. It's just not what I wanted to do, and I needed to facilitate what I wanted to do a little bit easier. And I'd rather live in my truck and do that so I could get where I'm trying to go, as opposed to sit around and wish for it. So anyway, fortunately, I never had to do that because Jay, kind of out of the blue, said, "Hey, we got space if you want to, we have to share a room." And I was like, hell yeah. And I just packed up, and I think I left that weekend.
That's awesome.
And then I was sleeping on a mattress underneath Jay's kind of lofted bed. But it wasn't like a full loft. It was like those Grace beds where you could sit them up a little bit and you sleep on the floor, which is what I did at Grace. So it was totally fine. So I just slept on the floor. I think I slept on the floor there for probably a year underneath Jay, just so I could use the gym and swim and get in shape and try keep trying the Navy thing. And then so I was working at the factory, and I kept running into hang-ups with the Navy thing, whether it was trying to go with the officer route or even the enlisted route. I tried to go the officer route for several years, I guess. And I just kept losing traction with the recruiters. I couldn't get them to get me to the next stages. I was collecting all these letters of recommendation and junk like that,
but it wouldn't push you to the next thing.
Yeah, and they really were not contacting me. I would call, I wouldn't hear back for months, and then a new guy would call me, and then it would be okay, well,
restart the process.
Yeah, so it was like that a lot. So I was like, screw it, I'll just try to go enlisted. But I only want to go enlisted if I can get a specific MOS, which is what I was trying to do something specific. But
right.
So then I had to kind of start that process. Anyway, amidst that process, I got a different job. I got a desk job at Zimmer Biomet because it was paying better, and I was like, I'm kind of tired of sweating it out here in the factory. I might as well get
a cushier. Yeah, it makes sense.
Cool job if this is gonna take a while, So, because I was working at the factory because I was like, I don't really care about this job. I'm gonna be doing something else. But it started taking so long. I was like, okay, I'll go get a better job, because then I won't have to do overtime or anything like that, which I was doing a lot of at the factory. So anyway, I hated that job more than anything in the world.
The desk job?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
It was really cool for like 1 month because I was just kind of sitting there doing nothing. And I remember texting my old boss at the factory. I was like, this is pretty sweet. Like, they're paying me to kind of sit here and do nothing. And he texted me back. He's like, enjoy that while it lasts. And I remember thinking, like, what could be so bad about this? Well, about a month into it, a month past that even, I was like, this is the most boring thing I've ever done. Mm-hmm. Like, I cannot stand being at this kind of a job. And I think a big turning point for me was with my boss to go talk to her boss. And I walked past the desk of this guy just sitting in a cubicle, and he was probably in his 60s or something like that, late 50s. And I was just like looking at him at his desk, doing his work. And he probably gets paid really well, but I was like, oh, I can't.
That's not you.
Yeah, I can't let that happen. So I was doing all this training for the Navy, and another Grace person, Jordan Wadetsky.
Wadetsky, okay.
I had always wanted to do like an Ironman, and if you don't know what that is, just a triathlon. It's pretty long.
You're doing the marathon. Is it a 3-mile swim or?
It's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and then a marathon, 26.2 mile run.
Yeah.
One after the other. So
that's crazy.
They have what's called a half Ironman, which is half of all those distances.
Yeah.
And
just a mile swim is nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, you get used to it, and then it's like, oh yeah, I haven't swam since last year, and I probably could run out there and do a mile swim, no problem. You just get used to that distance. Like once you swam like 3 or 5 miles, like a mile is like a warm up. It's no big deal.
Right.
Open water swimming is tough to get used to, but once you get used to that, it's like
I've done some sprints, and so open water is
it gets pretty
different
scary.
Than the pool.
For sure, and especially if you've got some real distance between you and the coast or the shore, I guess, whatever.
Yeah.
It can get pretty daunting. Like I've had a semi like panic attack out there. I lost my breath and was in the middle of Winona Lake, and I was like, okay, well, I better figure this out because I'm like a quarter mile from everything, so I gotta get across. So you kind of learn through those experiences. I've been out there in like basically a hurricane too, like swimming along, and then all of a sudden waves start crashing. You're like, holy cow, you can't see a foot in front of you. Like
you're just going forward.
Yeah, like what I did in that moment, it was me and another guy. I just like pulled my swim buoy because we use a buoy so boats can see us.
Right.
And I just pulled it close and it just like combat swam, like sides, like swam, my way closer, the direction I knew I had to go, but I couldn't see anything. I just held it right here, the buoy right next to my head, just so like if there was a boat out there, hopefully they would see the buoy and that would be me.
Right.
So, but yeah, it was pretty wild. And then I've swum across it in pitch black. You have lights in those things that blink. I mean, you get used to it, but they are definitely uncomfortable even as like an experienced swimmer. Anyway, yeah, swimming can be pretty tough. Fortunately, I've been kind of swimming my whole life, so
I remember. We'll go back to the Ironman because I'm gonna get. But I remember one summer. I think it was a summer between I knew you before and I knew you after, and you came back to Grace just shredded.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, how'd you get so shredded? And I remember you said you swam every single day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it blew my mind. I'm like, you can get this shredded off of swimming.
I was like that's when I had really made, because freshman year of Grace, I almost dropped out like a couple weeks into Grace.
Yeah.
I hated school so much.
There's story. I remember some stuff that went down. I remember, there was a party and then something in our downstairs.
I got suspended from Grace.
Yeah.
But this was like...
Did you really have a full Grace experience if you didn't get suspended? I feel
True.
like that's part of like
Yeah.
the growing up and becoming more of a man.
Yeah. If you didn't get suspended from Grace, you weren't trying hard enough.
Yeah.
Like you weren't doing anything. It's so easy.
It wasn't a well-rounded education if you didn't get suspended.
For sure. It's easy. You could just do normal stuff that you would never get in trouble for in the real world.
Right.
And you'd get suspended from Grace. So, obviously, if you did something pretty crazy, you would also get,
right.
Suspended from
the
Grace.
bar was so low.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I really wanted to, like, get out of there. But, yeah, that summer that you're talking about is really when I was like, okay, this is the path, like this Navy path, that's the direction I'm going to go. So I got to get squared away. I'll finish college because after getting, in trouble from Grace, it totally decimated my grades. And I was like, well, there goes my plans to transfer. So I might as well just stick it out here, finish it up, get a degree. Because it's not like I didn't think college was difficult. I just thought it was really boring. I just really did not want to be there. I thought the rules and stuff were really dumb. I have a psychology and behavioral science degree.
Yeah.
So that's also not like difficult or challenging. Maybe if I'd chosen something more challenging, I'd have had a different experience. But school was never really my thing. Just thought it was boring.
Yeah.
I was just doing it because it was a box to check.
Right.
So nobody could tell me to like that I should have done it. It's like, well, okay, well, I'll just do it. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. And if you wanted to be an officer, right, then you need a college education typically to get in there. So
yeah, and that's why I kind of justify. That was another thing that helped me justify it. But primarily, I had intentions of transferring out. But then when I got in trouble, they take a letter grade,
Yeah.
And it was like really put me in a bind. So I basically had to stay so I could graduate with decent grades. So
yeah.
So anyway, Jordan Wadetsky had reached out to me about a half Ironman because he was working at the same company as Zimmer Biomet.
Mm-hmm. Was he on the West Coast at that point?
No.
He's still here?
Yeah,
okay.
he's still here. And actually, he's in Michigan now, I believe.
Oh.
I don't think he doesn't work for Zimmer Biomet anymore, as
Okay.
far as I know. Anyway, he reached out. He knew that I would be interested in that, and I was like, yeah, totally, I'll do that. I didn't have a bike or anything. I had already been training, so I was in decent enough shape, and already been swimming, so kind of whatever.
It's kind of the hardest part, I think. In my opinion, was the swim.
But I didn't have a bike, and it came up to the last day you could sign up for that race before the price went up, and I messaged him over the corporate IM, and I was like, hey, it's the last day. Are you going to sign up? Because we were going to sign up and do it together, basically. And he didn't. He said he wasn't going to do it. Kind of backed out. Definitely throwing shade towards him. He should have done it.
A week.
Yeah. But anyway, he kind of backed out, and I remember sitting at my desk thinking about that, and I was like, I want to be somebody that does what they say they're going to do, and I said I was going to do this. So with or without him, I'm going to do it. And I may have even messaged him something similar to that, like, well, I'm going to do it without you then. Yeah. So that's what I did. I just signed up right there at the desk because it's not like I was working. And then I had to go find a bike, so I bought a bike that was like 2 sizes too small. I still have it. It's super tiny. Like it was like a girl's bike, and I didn't know about
54 inches or 52 inches.
I didn't know anything about sizing bikes or anything. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about triathlon. I'd never done one. I just was like going to go wing it, and it was in like a month. So I bought this bike.
Gosh.
And
60 miles?
56.
56,
yeah.
Okay.
So I bought this bike and started like biking, but I never biked the distance. I had never swam that distance, and I'd never run like a half marathon or anything like that. So kind of, this is a theme, but my plan was at that race, and this all ties into the story because of what happened at that race. My plan was to sleep in my truck the night before the race and then just wake up and do the race. I didn't tell anybody that I was going to do the race, except I texted my parents the night before, and I was like, hey, I forget what the conversation was, but I basically said, like, I'm actually going to be doing a half Ironman tomorrow in Michigan. And they're like, well, why didn't you tell us? We would have come watch. And I was like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like, the reason I was sleeping in my truck is I didn't have any money. Like,
yeah,
I was not equipped to like do anything significant, like get a hotel or Airbnb, if that was even a thing then. But like, it just wasn't going to happen. I was going to sleep in the truck. And anyway, so I'm going to rack my bike because you put your stuff
first
in your like where you
switch, right?
Yeah, your station basically. Yeah. You put that in there like the night before. So I was rolling my bike towards the bike hang up thing, and I literally brushed shoulders with somebody I recognized who was my boss, or like one of the owners of the factory that I worked at, and I recognized him just barely. I talked to the guy like one time.
Oh, wow.
But I knew his name, and I just kind of couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
I just turned around. I was like, "Hey, what's up?" And he's like, "Oh, hey, man, I didn't know you did these." I was like, "I don't. This is the first one I've ever done." He's like, "Cool. We've done it a few times, you know." I was like, "Awesome." And he's like, "What are you doing for dinner?" And I said, "Oh, I don't really know. Don't really have plans." He's like, "Oh, you should come to dinner with us. Where are you staying?" I said, "I'll probably just like sleep in my truck or something like that." In the truck, you saw it when you come in. It was that green Dodge.
Yeah.
So
it's huge.
Cab.
Yeah,
Single
it's
cab.
massive. Yeah.
1999 Dodge Dakota. It's basically rust on wheels.
Yeah.
And it was then, and it is even worse now. But anyway, he's like, "Oh, cool. Yeah, we do that sometimes." But he was like referring to like their RV or something.
Yeah.
And so I met up with him for dinner, and he saw my truck. He's like, "What, you're going to stay in that truck?" And I was like, yeah, just, you know, the seats lay down and I can, or the middle seat flips up and I can just kind of scrunch up across the seats there and be fine. He's like, no, man. You can come stay like on the floor in our hotel room or something like that. And
No way.
I was like, "Oh, cool. I appreciate that." Yeah. Anyway, so we went to dinner, and he was telling me about how they do these races and that they're going to be doing a full Ironman in a month. After this is sort of like their prep for that race. And I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." And he's like, "Yeah, man, you should totally come do it with us." And I was like, man, I don't know.
Let me finish this one first.
I've never even gone these distances, so I don't really have a month to like do those next ones. And it was in Canada. It was like 12 hours away, and I didn't have a passport or anything. But at that point, I was kind of game for anything. So I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I think so. I did that half Ironman. That was all cool. And I got back to work the next Monday, I think, and I think he texted me. He's like, "Yeah, the registration is still open if you're wanting to do it." And I was like, "Okay, this seems like a good opportunity for me, to build this friendship in some way." Like I just kind of inherently knew this would be something positive.
Well, and it's hard work.
Yeah,
It's extremely hard work.
yeah. So, but I didn't have a passport, so I over lunch I went to. You have to go to the courthouse and get all the paperwork, and then you have to fill out all the paperwork and do all that stuff.
So, do an express, I'm sure, or something.
Yeah, and that's what I did. I had to expedite. You can't. You can travel by like water or road with a passport card, which looks like an ID card, but to like fly, you have to have an actual like booklet.
Did you get the card?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I got the expedited card,
Which is even quicker.
Mm-hmm, which would have showed up in a month. So I paid extra, so it would show up like in a month. And so I was like, okay, I submitted all the stuff. I'm just waiting on the card now. So I was like,
Time to train.
I was kind of committed to doing this, but I didn't have a passport. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to wait on this. And I hadn't registered because it wasn't for sure that I could even do it until I had the passport card.
Right.
Well, like the week before, registration closed.
Oh.
And the guy, his name's Josh, he said that the race, it's still open. There's still slots, but you have to sign up. Sometimes you can sign up at the race. You can go to Canada and sign up like that.
Walk in and yeah.
If they have slots open. And I was like, okay. I'm still waiting on my passport card. So it came to the day before they had to leave to go up there. And my passport card showed up in the mail.
Oh, my
word.
word.
And I just texted, was like, okay, I'm coming. Where do I show up? Like, and so that next morning I had all my stuff and I just threw it in their RV.
Oh, my word.
We drove 12 hours up into Canada, and I had not signed up for the race yet. So we get to Canada, and
Have you guys been training together at all?
No.
So you're just training on your own at that point. Okay.
Yeah, I was just like showing up, kind of winging it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not seeing a theme at all.
Yeah.
No, okay. Yeah.
So I get there and I sign up, And I'm like, I'm not registered. Can I register? And the ladies there were like, literally nobody's ever done this before. We don't really know what to do. So but they had me fill out paperwork. One nice thing was I paid in Canadian dollars, so it was like $200 cheaper.
Oh, that's nice.
So that was cool. So yeah, I signed up the day before the race, at the race, and then like the next day, was the Ironman, and I just went out there and did it.
That's crazy.
The farthest I'd ever gone was half of all those distances in the half Ironman the month prior.
Right.
So that was the first time I'd ridden over 56 miles. So it was my first century ride in the race. It was my first marathon in the race. It was my first all of that stuff in the actual race. So yeah, showed up, did it. It was pretty cool. And on our way back, in between those two races, I actually did a Spartan race too. So I got this like massive rope burn on my shin, and it was like really infected. I was like cleaning it out all the time because like this is gonna be a problem at this race because I have this huge like
gash on your
yeah. I still have a scar from it, but anyway, that's beside the point. But anyway, so on our way back, his dad was there, and his dad was like really interesting guy, really sort of built that company that he worked for. And we had a 12-hour drive. Mm-hmm. And I was like, and at this time, because I was working at this desk job,
yeah,
I was so bored. And I just did not like it, and nothing was really seeming to go right with the Navy thing. Like the 6 months prior to that, I was finally scheduled for my last like thing. You have to do this sort of fitness test, mm-hmm. and you have to do it every month that you don't get selected. And the first time I did it basically the last day or the day of the selection, and I didn't get selected, which isn't a surprise. The first time I did it, like the idea that you'd be able to go in there and crush the selection test your first go at it is pretty unlikely anyway. So I was expecting to have to do it multiple times. So I had just been trying to get them scheduled. I had been getting for 6 months. It was like this. I got one scheduled every week for 6 months or every other week for 6 months. And they were in Michigan. I had to drive to Michigan to go do these things. I literally one time showed up at the place in Michigan and got a text from the recruiter like, "Oh, no test today." And I was like,
"Oh, my word.
Dude, you couldn't have told me that like anytime before that." And then the recruiter switched, and then they were getting scheduled again. Just every single week they were getting canceled basically, or every other week, however often they could schedule them. They just weren't scheduling. And I think part of it was just there weren't enough people to justify like having somebody go out there to like give somebody a test, but
right.
Whatever. Anyway, so I never got to retake this test so I could enter the selection pool. Like, because you have to, if you don't get selected, you have to retake the test and go through the selection pool again. Like, and you want to keep doing it to improve your numbers if you can, right? So anyway, I just never got to retake it. I got to take it one time, like the day before selection, didn't get selected. And then, to give you an idea, the only thing I didn't like, there's sort of like an auto qualification score. The only thing I didn't auto qualify was the run by like 4 seconds.
Oh, wow.
It's so like, auto qual, I don't even know if that's real, but like they have like these ideal numbers to hit. And if you hit them, like,
yeah, you get,
people think, I heard people say it's like, it's auto qualification, you'll get selected.
Yeah.
I missed the run by 4 seconds. You had to run 1.5 miles in 9 minutes. I ran it in 9:04, right? Like,
you're close.
Yeah. So like, it's not that I was incapable of hitting these numbers and being competitive. It's just like, I didn't get selected. That's okay. Like, it would be great to take the test again, but I never got to take the test again because they get canceled every single time. Wow. So I had already been kind of like thinking about doing something different.
It probably felt like the door was being shut. Mm-hmm. Like there's no easy way forward on this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I would always sit at the table or at my desk at work, and I would listen to motivational speeches
Yeah.
because I was so like wanting to do something, but so like stuck in this place of no progress. And to keep myself motivated, I would just like listen to these motivational speeches, listen to these motivational books, and it sort of they tend to direct you towards like business. And I'd always wanted to be in business. I always saw myself like after the military getting into like business and starting a business or something like that. I always wanted to do it. But then these things weren't happening. And I didn't know anything about business. You could argue I still don't, but like at that time I knew nothing. Like my dad works for himself now, but my whole life growing up he never did. He didn't start his business until I graduated basically from college. So there wasn't like much to learn from that because he was kind of at the beginning stages of that.
Right.
And it's a very specific business. And so the principles that can apply across the board are still like useful, but he's still kind of learning those things too. So I didn't know anybody that had their own business, never talked to anybody except for basically bumping into this guy.
Right. Who has a successful business.
Yes, exactly.
That you worked for. So you kind of knew a little bit of how maybe one aspect of how the business worked.
Yeah.
Because you're in there doing it.
Yeah.
So you have this 12-hour drive back.
Yeah. And so my plan was straight up, like, I knew that this guy was going to be driving, and I was like, I am going to sit shotgun with this guy and ask him every single question like I can think of. Like, I just want to learn. He clearly knows the thing that I don't know, and I want to know it so bad that, like, I'm going to sit here for 12 hours and try to, like, get whatever I can because this might be my only shot. I don't know.
Right.
So that's what I did. I just sat shotgun for 12 hours and talked to this guy and got to know this guy. And in that talk, you know, he was kind of asking me about myself, asking me what I wanted to do, and I was telling him about the Navy, and then someday maybe I wanted to be in business and that kind of thing. And he sort of said, you know, the military is, you know, very like structured. They tell you what to do and that kind of thing, and you don't, everything you're saying doesn't sound like a guy that likes that. You know, have you ever considered that? I was like, yeah, but, you know, I don't know what else really to do.
Yeah. This has been my goal, and I'm heading towards it.
Yeah. And so, I don't know, he kind of put this bug in my ear a little bit. Like, I definitely pursued the knowledge, but he sort of opened my mind, I guess, to the possibility of maybe not doing the military. And so when we got back from the Ironman, I did a lot of thinking about it, and I was just like, yeah, maybe I should just try to like start a business, start something. Like, I think I could do it, and I just kind of do that a lot. Is like, I'm pretty sure I could do this, so I just go.
I can do a half Ironman, no big deal.
Yeah.
Let's go do it. I can do a full marathon, all right? No big deal. Ironman, yeah, let's do it.
So, when I got back, I think I had another test canceled. Another, like, for the Navy.
Yep.
And I was just like, oh, yeah, this is so annoying. And I hated working at the place I was working at, and I hated it so much that my old boss had asked if I could come in to help out at the factory, like on weekends and evenings. I was like, yeah, like I hate it here that much. I'd rather work at a factory for less money, just because like I need to be doing something. I can't sit here all day and waste this much time.
Yeah.
So I had been really thinking about starting a business. I had like ideas. So I don't know. I just decided to. I got a call from the recruiter about, I asked him to call me, and we got on the phone, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm actually going to hold off on the Navy thing for now. Some other opportunities have come up, and I think I'm going to go that direction and see what those are like. Because at the time I was 25, and you could get into the program at 28 without an age waiver. After 28, you needed an age waiver, and I was like, okay.
I got 3 years.
Yeah.
I can retry this later. Yeah.
And I was like, I am going to give this a shot for 3 years. And if I don't figure anything out in 3 years,
Backup plan.
yeah, I'll just come back and try this.
Yeah.
I never went to the Navy, by the way.
Yeah.
So
many years later. Yeah.
So that's pretty much what my plan was. Like, I'll give this 3 years to try to figure something out, and we'll see. So I quit the job at the factory, at Zimmer Biomet.
Mm-hmm.
Went back to work at the factory because I had kind of worked out a deal to be part-time there so I could pay my rent and eat.
Yeah.
And then in the meantime, I was trying to start any kind of business, which for me started out like come up with an idea for a product and try to make prototypes and do all this stuff. And that went okay. The first thing I tried to do was these, which I think is still a good idea. I actually know it's a good idea because I have since worked with a client on Amazon that has a similar style business that does millions of dollars. So it was a good idea. I just didn't have any capital to really execute. And it was my first shot. It was my first try at a business. I didn't know what to do, but I thought my brother-in-law actually told me, he's like, you know, what they need is they need big can koozies for these tall boys because they can't find koozies for tall boys.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I'm going to figure out how to do that and get it like licensed for sports teams.
Nice.
Put on them. So like logos and things like that, because the company I worked at did that.
Right.
They did sports teams licensing. So my plan was like, if I can create this thing and show them prototypes, maybe then like
they'll snag it and run with it.
And I can be like part of the business and like,
or at least they can show you the path to do that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I was coming up with these designs. I bought a spool, like a bunch of neoprene, because I didn't know you could like buy and have these things just like screen printed. Right.
Yeah.
I didn't know you could do that. That's how much I didn't know about like business. I didn't know about sourcing products. I didn't know anything. I literally was like, okay, to do this, I know screen printing is a thing, and I know you can buy neoprene. So, like, I cut open a koozie, laid it out on the neoprene, and or measured it out, and then scaled it up to the size of a tall boy can,
mm-hmm.
and then cut it out. And then I was I would go get them screen printed with the designs, and then I would try to sew them myself by hand, and then flip them inside out, right, and make these prototypes. I still have a box of prototypes somewhere.
Yeah,
I could show you. Actually, I think they're in that office. But sorry. So like I was doing this by hand because I legitimately did not know anything.
Right.
If I'd have spent any time figuring that other part out, or somebody would have given me like a tip, like, hey, you can buy these things.
Right.
They exist. You just buy them and then have them
Print
printed.
Right. Cut out half 90% of the work right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I had no idea. I just didn't know anything. And so anyway, it just, I got to a point with it where I was like, it's not, I don't have the ability to like make enough of these things. And I kind of just let it go by the wayside. I still think it's a good idea, but I didn't keep pursuing it because I realized like, I don't have the money to like do this at scale, and because I'm working part-time at a factory.
Yep.
And
the amount of energy you're putting into it right now is not the return. I can't
sew thousands of these things. Yeah. Like I don't know what to do, and I really wasn't getting any help, obviously, but I wasn't really asking for help. I really wanted to like do it and then like show them that I had done it.
Right.
Already done it.
Right.
Anyway, I sort of like let that go. It's still a really good idea. And anybody can run with it if they want and make millions of dollars, and I just won't. Give me some credit. But,
yeah.
So I was just working at the factory then. Like after I kind of stopped doing that, I was just like, okay, well, I'll think of something else. And so I was still kind of working and then passively trying to figure things out. Like, okay, well, what's another idea? Like I thought about like, can you make phone cases out of recycled grocery bags and
mm-hmm.
like lots of stuff. Like I really wanted to try something, but have no knowledge. And then I was eating lunch at the factory in their break room after they had like a board meeting or some kind of meeting, and they had left a profit and loss sheet from one of their brands that they were invested in, company that they were invested in. They left it on the table. And I was looking at it, and I can understand numbers, you know, and I saw that like 1 week they made $11,000. And I was like, they made 11 grand off of these stupid little bracelets in a week. I could make those. Like, I know I could make those. So I just have to come up with a different idea, like of how to make them, but different, right? Same thing, but just different enough.
Right.
And then maybe that is the thing that I can, you know, sell to the company I work for, like give them that, like, and build.
Yeah, I'm also making 11,000 off of this. Like, yeah.
And so I started doing that. I was just like, all right, I'm going to figure out how to do this, because if you can make that much money off of this silly little thing, like, I'm going to do that. I could figure that out. So that's what I started doing. I started like, I talked to my boss and I was like, hey, can I come in like at night during third shift when nobody's here except for like the guy that runs the cutters?
Right.
Can I come in and, because I didn't have any tools, can I come in and try to build some prototypes? And he's like, yeah, sure. And he wasn't like the owner of the company. He was just like my immediate like boss.
Right.
And we had a good relationship. We were friends. So anyway, so that's what I was doing. I was going in at like 9 o'clock at night when nobody was there, because I didn't want to like, I knew it probably wasn't, maybe shouldn't have been doing it, but was doing it because I didn't have any tools, and they had tools there. And I was like, I don't have a way to cut these things out of wood. I don't have a way to drill holes in these things. I literally don't have tools. So that's what I was doing. I was making some prototypes. And then I was like, okay, well, how do I put words on them? You know, you could paint them and something like that. But we used a laser engraver at the factory. And I was like, my boss was like, you know, they make like small ones that can do little like wood burnishing stuff. And I was like, so I got like a wood burnishing tool and tried to do it by hand. And then I got, my great grandfather had these little dies with lettering on them that you would punch into metal to make labels. Oh, okay. And so I tried heating those up on the oven or with a flame to try to like burn the wood in. And then my boss said, like, you know, they might make like small laser engravers. So I looked for those and I found them. And I was like, okay, it's like $112, which at the time was like a lot. That's like a week of work for me right now. Right. But I bought one of these things, but I didn't know how to do laser engraving. So I bought that. Then I had to teach myself how to do it, because it was like, at that time, they're really janky. Like now you can just like program it in, and it just does it. You just drag a picture in and it will do it, because they're so much better now. Yeah. Then like I literally had to like G code this thing. Wow. So I had to learn how to do it in the first place to then get it to do what you wanted it to do. Yeah. So, and I had to find the software. So I had to find like open source software and get that connected to it. So that way I could actually like do the thing, because I didn't have money to pay for real software. So I had this like jank software. Yeah. I could run this jank cutter, like laser engraver, that I then had to like figure out how to make it do anything. Yeah. So I had to learn all this stuff I didn't know. So anyway, I started making them. And I started like selling them. I was like doing cold outreach emails to companies. I was like, hey, I can put your logo on this. Like, would you be interested in that? Like, and they were super cheap, you know, and I was making some sales. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try to go all in on this because it's working. At that time, I'd make like $1,000. It was like nothing, but I was like, all right, let's do it. I'm going to go for it. So I quit that job. I was doing it, and I had asked to change my shift so that way I could spend more time during the week doing it, trying to sell. So I was doing like 3 12s over the weekend. I was doing like Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. Yeah. And then during the week, I was like trying to do this other thing, make these bracelets. And some drama happened, and my boss was let go, and I was like, okay, well, there's sort of my there was your favor. Yeah. And your favor is gone a little bit, or you have to rebuild. Yeah. So I was like, well, if he's gone, then I'm going to go and just try to do this, is really how that worked out. Yeah. So I decided to quit. I didn't do it the coolest way, but I was just like, whatever. So I just left. I just didn't show up anymore. And then I came in to collect the rest of my stuff the next day, and I was like, I don't work here anymore. And left. So then I was trying to do it.
Burned the bridge. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, it was whatever. I mean,
yeah,
it is what it is.
You passed it now.
Yeah. And then so then a few months later is when I get this letter in the mail, a cease and desist, because they found out that I was doing this, and the company that I worked at had this relationship that had already ended by this point.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I started doing it. I was like, their relationship ended. And so I was like, well, then they're looking like...
There's an opportunity.
Yeah. It's like, if they want to do this, but the partnership has ended, then maybe I can do this, and they would pick up where they left off, because they saw a lot of opportunity with it, but it was just sort of like a difference in, personality and strategy, I guess, that sort of ended the relationship. I don't know all the specifics, but it was seemingly one-sided. So it seemed like the company would still want to pursue something like this. So again, I was like, well, if I can just swoop in and provide the thing that they're looking for, that would be great.
It's an opening.
Well, except I immediately, like within a month of leaving, they found out I was doing this thing because I had sold to a local company that they could have sold to, right? And so they wanted to figure out how that happened. And it basically got back to that I was this guy doing it.
Yeah.
And I had worked for this other company. And so this other company, I got a cease and desist from my employer on behalf of like this other company, which I thought was really bullshit.
Yeah.
And
even though you weren't working there anymore.
Mm-hmm. And even though that relationship had already ended.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I was, and specifically, it was a non-solicitation, like is what they said, is that I was soliciting their customers. I was like,
gotcha.
I totally am not soliciting your customers, because you don't make this thing. These people do, and you don't have this relationship with these people. Like,
right.
Just like, and I don't really have a real, like, I worked at the factory. Like, right. I don't have an actual
CRM database full of their contacts.
Right. Like the idea that like I have a legitimate non-compete is kind of BS.
Yeah.
Anyway, but they came after me, trying to kind of, I guess, intimidate me out of it. That wasn't going to work. So I immediately lawyered up and was like, all right, well, I'll just fight back. Like, I'm not gonna let you tell me what to do. Who the hell are you? And I like these people, but I was like, I don't care if I like you. You're not telling me how to run my show. You don't have what are you gonna do?
Right.
So, I lawyered up, and we went back and forth for a while, and I kept doing it. I kept making the bracelets, kept selling them, and I wasn't making a ton of money, but like I was getting better at it. I was learning, and I realized realized all the other stuff I didn't know how to do, like marketing and sales, and like these are all things I just had no idea how to do. I could make a thing, but now I need to figure out how to sell a thing.
Right. Sell it to people who want it.
Right. Yeah. And to find those people and to, convince them, that it's something that they would want. And, there's so much I didn't know. Anyway, so I had a lawyer, and it ended up basically, we all sat down in a room, and I don't know, they tried to like, I don't know, they told me that what I was doing wasn't technically wrong, but it was immoral. And I was like, okay, sure it is. And after that, I immediately made shirts and mugs that had immoral in their brand logo.
Oh, wow.
So, but then they said they weren't going to pursue it anymore. So I was like, okay, well, that's that. And, I stood my ground. I kept doing it. But they got kind of what they wanted, in the sense that, like, I didn't have any money, and I was paying for an attorney and trying to build this up. And so all the money I did have basically
went to the attorney.
Went to an attorney. And it ran me out of money. That's basically it. And so I literally didn't have enough money to buy food. So our rent, because we were sharing housing, like my portion of rent was like $200 a month. And I was living on like $5 a week for food. I would buy, so you could buy, at that time, you could buy a dozen eggs for 99 cents, and you could buy 2 pounds of sausage for like $5. So for $6 basically, I was living on 2 pounds of sausage and 12 eggs a week.
Oh my word.
So, because I was super broke, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I think about this a lot because it helps remind me to, like, when I feel like potentially giving up, or I get, you go through those stages, like you'll always feel like you want to give in.
Yeah.
And I remind myself of this moment that I just remember so vividly, because it was like I was standing in the grocery store looking at tubs of ice cream because I wanted to have ice cream so bad. But I knew that if I spent another $5, I literally would not be able to buy food next week.
Wow.
And I was just standing there staring at the ice cream, and I was like, almost brought me to tears, because I was just like, I want this so bad, but I know that if I do this, like,
yeah,
I am totally effed.
Yeah.
Like, I remember that moment so vividly, because it was just like such a powerful, like, I'm so freaking mad.
Yeah.
Like, I got to do something. So anyway,
that's nuts.
I was really out of money.
Yeah.
I was so out of money that I was trying to get a job. I was like, okay, I don't have any money. I got to get a job. And I couldn't find a job. So a job came up at this restaurant, Rua, to be a cook. And I don't know, I wasn't a cook, like, but they needed a cook for like, I was making like, they were offering like $9.50 an hour. And
that's 2 weeks worth of food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Per hour. Yeah.
So what happened is I legitimately did not. I kept getting like these notifications on my phone that my bank balance was like under $250, under, whatever, because I had a setting on there, and I was down to my last like $160 or something like that, and all of a sudden I got charged by a website host that I wasn't using anymore, like $150.
Oh.
And my balance was $11 and like 58 cents. I think it was $11.58 was literally all the money I had in the world. And I was like, oh crap. Like, this is all I've got until I can get that money back. Right. Because I reach out to them. I was like, I didn't mean this. I'm not using it. Like,
yeah. Can you refund, please?
Right. Yeah. And they were like, yeah, we can, but it was going to be like 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Like it wasn't.
They'll process it, then send it back to you.
Yeah. So they got to process a return, and they got to do it. So maybe it was like a week, but whatever it was, like, my balance hit $11.58, and I was just like, okay.
Oh my word.
Things are like serious right now.
Yeah.
And I was waiting to hear back on this job at Rua. So I had an interview, and I basically all but begged. Like, I was like, I can learn how to do cooking. Like, I'll wash dishes. I don't care. I like,
hook me up.
Please give me a job. And what helped was I used Tanner Joy as a reference, because he had worked as a server there. So he knew through that connection, like I was like, I know Tanner really well. Like,
he'll vouch for me.
Yeah. So he like helped me. He was like, yeah, okay, we can start you at $9.50 an hour. I was like, dope. I went to my landlord, and I was like, look, I don't have any money for rent. But I just got a job, and I will have money for my $200 a month rent in a couple of weeks. And she was like, okay, that's cool. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I did not expect this to happen. Like, things are going on, in my life, and I just I literally don't have any money.
I'm getting sued. No big deal. Yeah.
And so, and I said, like, and I won't miss next month's rent. I'll pay it on time. I'll pay this one and next month. Like, it just,
boom,
you can work with me. So, and she did. So my first check paid rent, and then my next check basically paid rent.
Wow.
Right. For the next month. Because they were not big checks. I was working like, I don't know, maybe 20 hours at the kitchen or something like that. After taxes and everything, you're making a couple $100, a paycheck or something. So,
right.
Anyway, but what was great about it is I could actually eat more food because I worked at a restaurant.
Yeah.
So I could like
supplement your.
I could eat like dinner there, because we had like what they called family dinner, where they would if you were working the dinner shift, right, we'd make dinner and we'd have dinner before the shift, so that way, you know, we didn't have to eat during the shift or take breaks or anything like that.
Yeah.
So boom, one more meal a day.
Yeah.
And then I could still do the eggs and sausage, you know, for breakfast. So I finally got to 2 meals a day after like a few months of literally like
1 meal a day.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
It was pretty wild. So anyway, all the stuff I didn't know how to do, you know, like the marketing and the sales and all these things, what I was doing is I would work at the restaurant from 2 to midnight, you know, and then I would wake up in the morning, and from 8 to 2, basically, I would just try to teach myself like some skill, like how to do marketing, how to do sales, how to do SEO, how to do this stuff, like, because I didn't know, and I was still trying to do bracelets at the same time, but I was like, I got to spend some time actually figuring out how to do this other
so
stuff.
this flows a lot easier. Yeah.
And then what I just kind of realized, I watched a video from on YouTube, and a guy was like, here's the types of businesses you should start as your first business, just these service-based businesses, like where you are providing a skill that a business needs, you know, like website building or SEO or whatever. And I was like, okay, which of those things is the easiest one to learn? I'll do that. So I started learning that during the 8 to 2 part of my day, and then from 2 to midnight, or 2 to 2, basically, I'd work at the kitchen because we closed, but then you have to like clean up and close the restaurant. So, and on weekends we were open till like 11. So then you're not leaving
there for a couple hours,
like 1 or 2 in the morning sometimes. So maybe midnight, but basically that was my work schedule, 8 to midnight or 2 o'clock, basically every day, right? Because I was trying to build a business, run a business at the beginning of the day, and had to actually survive the second half of the day. So I did that for, what I realized was basically as I was learning these skills, I could get clients doing these things for them, right? I could sell this service actually as a business. And so
like you middleman kind of, right?
Well, I could basically
or you would be doing the service.
Yeah, I would be doing the service as like a freelancer, which is how I started. And so basically I would, you know, look at these job boards like Fiverr and stuff like that. At that time, it was something else.
Upwork? No.
Yeah, I did eventually do Upwork, but I was it was some weird like foreign one. I started for like $10 an hour trying to do stuff for people, just to get my chops. And the very first contract I had, the very first person I worked with, I straight up, my very first job, like 2 minutes into the job, I lied. I didn't know how to do any of it. I was just sort of like had a vague idea and was gonna learn while I was working for him. And I straight up killed this like dentist's website.
Oh,
in like 2 seconds of the job, and I was like, oh, frick, what am I gonna do? So I just messaged the guys like, hey, I accidentally hit something and it crashed this website for this guy, and he's like, oh, that's no big deal. Just when you're in there editing, you just have to hit this button instead of that button. I was like, because he turned it back on in like 2 seconds.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I thought I was screwed. But anyway, so I realized I could sell this skill as a service as well. So that's what I started doing, is sort of trying to get clientele as a freelancer doing SEO stuff. And then what happened was I went on a mountain biking trip and bumped into another local business owner that had a different type of business. He sold wholesale through Amazon, and he was having trouble with growing that business and that kind of thing. Like he didn't know much technical stuff, but he bought it because he thought it would be, you know, fun to figure out. And he was having trouble with like service providers, you know, charging a lot of money and wasn't seeing a lot of results. He's like, would you want to take a crack at it? I mean, that's the short version.
Yeah. After probably chatting for a while.
We went on this bike trip, and I was like, this is a guy I want to get to know too. Like, he clearly has knowledge that I need. And so I'm going to talk to him. So like every month I would just text him like, hey, can we go get coffee? And he'd be like, yeah. So we'd schedule coffee. And every month we were getting coffee and just getting to know each other and become friends. And it wasn't till like 18 months of that or maybe a year of that, basically, where he came to me and he was like, "You do this website stuff, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, kind of. I've never done like what you do." But he's like, "Would you be interested in trying to figure this out? Because these guys aren't figuring it out." I was like, "Okay, I'll take a crack at it, but I don't know what to do, so I'll be kind of learning."
Yeah. I can't have guaranteed results.
Yeah.
And
he's like, "That's fine. Like, go for it. Like, I need somebody to do something." So I was like, "Cool." So I had always had this goal of like, if I could figure out how to make $2,000 a month on my own, then I would not have to work at the restaurant because I could survive on that amount of money.
right.
And then I could work from there. And it just so happened that after like 18 months of working at the restaurant, learning these skills, trying to get clients, that I had collected enough business to be at that point at basically $2,000 a month. And then, he presented me with this opportunity to try to learn this part of the business, a totally different skill that I have to learn. And he offered me $2,000 a month. And immediately, it doubled. I hit double my goal.
Yeah.
I remember when I hit it, because I was sitting at having coffee with somebody else, and I just remember those things all kind of falling into place at the same moment. I was like, I'm so grateful right now. I want to remember this moment, because
that's a high compared to the low of looking right at the ice cream to the sitting at a coffee shop, right, spending a little extra money on some coffee, and dude, I'm making that's nuts. Yeah,
and so basically, that moment happened, and I decided to stop working at the restaurant. Mm-hmm. Now I stayed. I would work the Sunday brunch shift and really
stayed in the loop a little bit.
Yeah, just to stay friendly, also keep something there just in case. And they always need help. And I really liked it there. I really liked those people. They've become some really close, good friends since then, because they literally saved my life at that point. I don't know what I would have done had I not gotten that job. I don't really want to envision it, but I legit I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah.
So. Pretty much saved my life in that moment. But anyway,
see you on the corner.
Yeah. There's something to be said for maintaining some kind of stability and not constantly going all in. Unfortunately, I've never learned that lesson because I still do it. I've done it this year. I've put myself in a pretty interesting bind. It's just the level. My baseline is just higher.
Yeah.
But I've done it again. And I probably will do it again, but hopefully the next time I do it, my baseline will be even higher, but so I haven't learned a thing about that.
But you have some skills.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
So, anyway, so then things just kind of went on from there. I had now this volume of work and stability, and I just kept doing it, and then just kept trying to build off of that. And that's pretty much the trajectory. And that, funnily enough, was right around the time, that was 2-ish years after I decided okay, I am going to not do the Navy thing, and if I figure something out in 3 years, I will stick to that. And that was, I was 2 years after that.
Wow.
So I had figured something out, and that to me was just that's
the decision. That's the way I'm going. And
yeah. And so basically since then, I have been all in on doing that. And that's evolved into other partnerships and other businesses. I have actually the person that had the Amazon business that gave me that opportunity. He and I actually own another Amazon business together, and then I own one with his son-in-law. So, but I'm a part owner, and not even the majority owner,
right,
in one of them. So, it's they're just partnerships. The only thing I do on my own is I still do the consulting and have that business, that service business, providing services to Amazon businesses, because that's the lane I went down. Basically, what happened was I started working on this thing for the guy and ended up being pretty good at it. It ended up making a lot of sense to me. It was easier to show results than the stuff I was doing. So I was all right, I'm going to go all in on this. And I've basically been doing that ever since.
Wow.
Is basically been started kind of as an advertising consultant. I still kind of call myself that, but technically I'm more of like a overall like business consultant for these Amazon brands now. Because, I've been doing it now for little over 6 years, maybe 8 years. I don't know, a while.
Yeah. Are you doing so when I go on to Amazon and I hit something that's Prime, are you putting the thing that's probably at the top of the list, or helping them choose how to put the right words so it gets into the searches, into the algorithm?
Yeah, that's some of it for sure. Is advertising. Advertising is good because it's kind of a consistent need, so you can get kind of monthly retainer work that adds some stability to the business.
Yeah,
because they always need it, and they're always trying to push, and grow. So there's always something to do, like updating your titles and things like that.
Right.
That's kind of a one-off thing that you do need to do and have maintenance done on it, but it's not monthly, right?
Right.
So there are things that are more monthly that have to be done, like even just the day-to-day management that always has to be done. And so providing that service is the bulk, of what I do.
What's the other pieces of, you said more of a business when it comes to Amazon, like a couple of them. Is that like starting new products, or what is that?
Yeah, I definitely help. I don't design products for people, although I do have offer sort of suggestions about.
You've been in the space long enough. You can say this probably would work better than that. Just expertise.
Yeah, and sort of if they are a specific type of brand, there's probably accessory type products or complementary products that they could add to the brand that they may not have thought of. And because I'm doing a lot of advertising, I'm seeing a lot of things that people are searching.
Yeah. And they buy this. Typical customers buy this and this and this together when they purchase. So why not offer that?
Yeah, exactly. That type of thing.
Yeah.
But a big part of my consulting lately, because Amazon charges people a lot of fees to sell on that platform. Yeah. And so a big part of what I've been doing lately, probably for the past full year, has shifted a lot towards profit optimization, everything that you can do to find every single penny in the business that you can squeeze back out for yourself.
Is that looking at the fee structure and resetting stuff? I know I've looked into some Amazon stuff in the past. Fulfillment by
FBA by Amazon.
Yeah, so where you would then send in your product, you'd scan it, put the little label on, send it into their warehouse until it's purchased, and then goes out. Then you get paid. But you're paying a rental fee to put your item in Amazon.
Yep.
And so, and there's different ways, because you can sell it yourself directly to the customer. That means you ship it.
Yeah.
There's levels.
For sure.
And there's, more convenient and less convenient.
Yep.
Right. And so it's not as easy as this is all you do. There's levels of it.
Yeah. And fees are changing all the time. Amazon's always trying to milk more money out of people. Yeah. Your margin is their opportunity is kind of their motto. Jeff Bezos, I think, literally said that. So yeah, it's that kind of thing. Just sort of making sure now, because it's become such a big deal. Amazon several years ago was kind of a mad gold rush. You could just make heaps of money really, really fast. Then it started getting kind of flooded with Chinese sellers that were selling direct from the factory, because a lot of people were sourcing from China and selling it on Amazon, right? Yeah. Then China was like, well, why are we doing this? We'll source to you and we'll compete with you directly from the factory. So it's gotten to be a lot tougher game. And the fees have just continued to kind of climb. And so really now people are a lot more, not that they weren't focusing on profit before, it's just that profits were so much.
There's a lot higher margin.
Yeah, it was easier to be profitable and kind of not pay that much attention to it. Now it's you got to really be on the ball, because these things are changing fairly frequently. And so you got to know.
And if you're a business owner and you're spending all this time, trying to do other things and make the business run, right? You're selling the product and you're marketing and you're trying to call people, and then you're putting this Amazon piece into it, you don't have time to do all the research on what's the trends. I feel that with when I'm making YouTube videos, the things are changing in YouTube all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to produce content. And so that's where you're coming in and you're saying, hey, these are the pieces you probably are missing because you're just not in the know. And this is what I'm doing all day long.
Yeah. And part of that is then also like facilitating that. So like, here's all the things you need to do. I can take care of this for you. So now you don't even have to worry about this. Like, here's a problem. Here's how you would solve it. But I'll do that for you. Like, that's sort of more so.
Here's the value of what I bring to the table.
Yeah.
So, and you can do it, but do you have time to do this?
Right. Yeah. And so basically it's a balance between, what it costs to have me do it versus, not necessarily even what it costs to have them do it. It's the ratio of the value provided. So like if something, for example, saves them $20,000, right? There is my sell basically is, don't think of it as paying me a certain amount of money. It's like, I'm just making a portion of this extra money that you're making, right? It's basically a commission on the value I'm providing. And so that's kind of the way to do it. And sometimes that you're not dealing with numbers that big.
Well, that's a good value proposition.
Right. But
you bring it up to them.
That's how you kind of frame it instead of like, here's what I charge to do this. It's like, here's the tangible dollar amount like that you will benefit from. And all I'm asking is, is this little piece of it.
Right.
But it ends up working out, like, obviously. So
yeah, for both of you.
Yeah.
Well, and it has to.
Yeah, and that's kind of how these types of businesses are done. But you have to be able to tie them, I think, really tangibly to dollars.
It makes it probably such an easy sell.
Yeah.
Too, when they can see, this is what I'm missing. I'm missing I'm putting $10,000 off the table. I'm not even pulling it in.
Yeah.
So well, maybe I get 4 of the 10, but that's 4 more than I'm getting currently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of the way it works. But yeah, I've been doing that, and basically, I had been doing a lot of sort of doing a lot of stuff for myself, right? So I still do it all myself, and I've been doing it that way for basically the whole time. Is me personally is providing the service, and that's not that sustainable. It's not really where I want to end up with the business at all.
Yeah. Well, and growth means you're the only one doing it. So how much time do you put in?
Right.
You can only do so much.
Right.
Right. So if you want to double or triple, you either have to get better or go out hire clients, or you have to. There's no multiplication.
Yeah. So
your time.
So the next piece of the equation, which is what I've really been invested in this year, is kind of reshaping the business to step back and like higher into the service provided. I guess I think about it like that. But basically, to grow, I need to have contracts in such a way that like I'm really just sort of like managing the people that provide the service now, as opposed to me providing the service. And so that transition, it's not actually that easy, because you have to. There's some math involved in that, right? Like if you're going to be basically selling other people's time, then you have to be able to sell that at a margin that can also benefit you, right? And
make sure there's enough of a market for you to have enough for you and whatever else time you're selling.
But there's a piece of that like is the money that you bring in then from a client has to be a certain amount, because that is an amount that will basically create that margin for you, right? And so then you have to find those clients, and it's not that easy,
right?
And that's where some of the trick is. But basically, this year, I have kind of what I used to do was a lot of subcontracting. So big agencies do this, right? They just hire out services they don't provide, and they've got enough relationships and brand recognition, to draw in big clients, and so then they just pass off the work to people. That's kind of the way many agencies, not all, but lots of them operate that way. The ones that don't, right, you're paying real big prices for. But anybody that's moderately affordable, most of the time they're also just passing it along.
Yeah.
And that's cool, but to me, this year I've basically committed myself to not doing any more of that, which means, a big piece of the business is not
being provided to you.
Yeah, I'm just not going to do it because I think the best move is to actually.
You want to be the agency.
Yeah, basically.
You want to be the one that's like subcontracting to the people below you, not being the subcontractor.
Yeah, and I think that I just don't like that model for myself to be, basically have a lot of jobs. It's really transitioning it now into a more substantial business.
Well, it sounds like you're consulting too. So you come in and you're providing value from all of your experience. And then you're saying these are the pieces that need to be fixed. And it doesn't mean you have to be the one that fixes it because it sounds like there are people skilled to be able to do it. But then you provide the game plan and the value that they're going to get.
Yeah.
And that they pay you to execute it. But you're not the one executing every single piece. You may execute like 2 or 3, 20, 30, 40% of what it is. But the other you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's basically.
That's cool.
Where things are this year is kind of working on that transition, and there's risk involved. Like I said, I'm kind of I guess I go all in a little bit, and I basically stopped doing any subcontracting because essentially they're competition at this point. And the argument could be made that if you keep doing that, then you get everybody's work. But I really knew that I needed to learn the skill that they have that I don't, which is procuring
the big fish.
Yeah. And so I've basically dedicated myself this year to learning how to catch big fish. And that's a long process. But fortunately, baseline is much higher than not being able to eat. So it's great, but it's interesting to be, back at a stage of the business where it's like, man, I felt like, the business was bigger than this for a while, and it was, but now it's sort of like, it still is. It hasn't been realized yet because, in a year's time, having figured these things out, and I made a lot of progress in that dimension. It's just sort of like, it's a long process.
Yeah.
That's really all I can say about it. It just takes a while. And
I was in sales before the job I'm in now, and it was like to get a large client could take up 9 to 18 months, 9 months of, and that's understanding what their need is and showing them the value. But they have budgets, they have cycles, and you got to work your way through it and make them feel comfortable enough before they make the move. Yeah. And so that takes time. It's not, hey, I can go onto a job board and get a job today. It's like, this will come. But right now, I'm waiting until I can pull that big fish in. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's really what it's been like this year. I mean, I still have, the business still doing the business things. It's just like subcontracting, was a big piece of the business that I basically cut off on purpose because it was consuming so much time for so little value. Because it's like, to subcontract, you can't charge, what you would normally charge a direct client. And so you're always getting squeezed, on your price because they're trying to improve their margin. Yeah. It just becomes so much of a hassle that I decided it was better for me to not just cut that off in one go and spend my time figuring out how to not need it again, as opposed to like just looking at the number coming in every month and being like, damn, right. Like, that's cool, but I want, like, in a year's time to be like, damn.
Right.
Right? So, to do that, you do have to sort of, like...
cut the fat out a little bit and really go.
You have to plan for that. You have to kind of game plan and figure out what to do. And I realized, that I was missing this big piece. And I will be when I figure that out, I'll be missing another big piece to go to the next level, right? And so it really is just this constant, I think of it as like climbing mountains and valleys, going through mountains and valleys. And it's like, you see the peak of the mountain that you would like to be at, and you yourself are already on a peak, you know, because you climbed through a valley from a lower peak, and you're like, okay, I know what it took to get up this mountain through that valley. I know what that's like. I could do that again. Yeah. And I see that mountain over there, and I'd like to try to get up there, but I have to go through this new valley that I don't know, and I'm just going to have to go through it. So where are valleys from peaks? They are down. Like you will go through these things and get up on the other side. And I would say, you know, and then you're at that peak, you know, and it's all great. And then you see another peak and you're like, okay, I think I could get up there actually. Like, but you couldn't even see that peak from
where the peak below.
The peak below. Yeah. It's just like, there's other peaks in the way. You have to get up to one of those things and see, like, oh, it keeps going, you know. And so that's kind of the way things work. Or at least that's the way I believe things work. I don't know if that's true, but that's the way I
see that pattern a lot I've seen that in my life. I think you see it in a lot of just like historical figures in their lives, how they do things. I think it's a resounding pattern. Like it makes sense.
Yeah. So, and that's like, I guess right now in the stage of where I'm at this year, I think I'm starting to get to the top where the trees start getting real thin.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay. I see. Finally, I've gotten out of the darkness, and like the peak is up there. I know it's coming. You know, I can see past the trees. The trees aren't the tallest thing, you know, anymore. I can see the mountain above the trees again. You know, I don't know if you've done a lot of.
I've done some hiking, for sure.
Like, so if you're familiar with that, like I've mountain biked out in mountains, and like that's always like you're pedaling up this steep, you know, cliff, and you're like, oh, I hate this, right? And then all of a sudden you like turn on this ridge, and it's like, oh, I can see the sky again. Yeah, like we must be getting close, right? And that's where I feel like I'm at now, after several months of, you know,
just kind of grinding and walking uphill.
Yeah.
And
so, but that's just the process, I think, of life in anything. And this is business, but it's that way for anything that you want to do. So, or, you know, that's what I believe. But as part of the game, if you want to play it.
Yeah.
You don't have to. That's the thing. Is you don't have to play the game. It's just like, I want to.
Yeah, but then you're that 55-year-old guy just at his desk.
Exactly.
Vibing.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and for that person, there's something about adventure. I don't know, I think there's something that we're called to kind of venture out, and those stories of, you know, getting sued and not able to buy ice cream, those make for better stories than, what'd you do all your life? You know? It's not as compelling. Like, and that's why I did not know this whole story, and it's been fascinating from start to finish. I've really enjoyed it. I've gotten glimpses of your story, but like having this full picture is like, and you just don't know these things until you get into a conversation with someone.
Yeah, for sure.
I love it.
It's everybody's got things.
Yeah.
You know, everybody has interesting elements to their life. That's just mine. Just happen to be those. You know.
Yeah.
But it's all good. I mean, I enjoy it. I wouldn't want to do it any other way. I do think that, like, one of the things, regardless of what you do, you have to kind of confront the emotions of, like, I think fundamentally for me, this is how I frame it, is, do you want to be the kind of person that does, you know, what they say they're going to do? Or you could frame that a little bit differently and be like, are you going to do anything that you want to do? Like, because some people really are really hindered by uncertainty and fear, and it can hold you back a lot. But it's not like I am totally certain and lack fear. I have all of those things to the degree, to almost a debilitating degree. It's purely the, like,
pushing through it.
Yeah, it's just like I refuse to let that decide anything for me, because I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that way. So it's, and to be honest with you, the higher the stakes, you know, I feel like the more you feel it. I think when stakes are kind of low, obviously, you know, the stakes are low. It doesn't feel that way. I think and by that I mean like when I at the beginning, you know, quit my factory job that I knew I didn't want to have and wouldn't basically have, you know, to take a risk and try to figure things out. Like that's no big deal. I mean, it feels like a big deal because it is itself a big deal, but like it's very different than like I'm about to have a child, you know, this year, and there's only so many months between
now and then,
and like I've decided to take a risk with changing this business to better it for the long term, but part of that risk is no longer risking potentially things for myself. It's I've
for
got
the child.
yeah,
too.
I've got family, I've got a wife, you know, and like
Yeah.
it's like the stakes do get higher, and you still have to be able to like do it. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. It adds a new level.
Yeah.
Dude, we've done an hour and a half.
Oh.
Isn't that nuts?
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of flies by when you're just sitting and chatting. I have other questions, but maybe we say that for another time.
Totally.
If that works.
That works.
Where can people? I know you're doing like the wine stuff and the even the pizza stuff, but like what's I always like at the end of my podcast to let people shout out or follow, or where do you want people to direct their attention to get a hold of Richard?
I mean, I have a Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the handle is, but it's my name.
I can link it. I'll link it in the show notes.
That's like my Twitter. I have my wine YouTube channel, but I also have my business YouTube channel. Those are the primary ones that I really want to promote the wine one because that's just like a hobby.
Yeah.
I find myself needing. So I started the pizza journey, you know, as to give myself an easy task that required you to learn how to do a process.
Yeah.
Just sort of like training myself mentally.
It probably comes from the chef piece of too. Like you were making,
I like pizza.
You're making good food.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, well, let's do this into something that I also enjoy. Pizza.
And so the wine thing is like, it's that same thing, but it's on a much longer time scale. So the way I see myself in business and life is that now I'm working on longer time scales, and I want to have as much practice at like planning on longer time scales as I can to get good at like strategizing over long periods of time. And to me, I like wine, so it's easy. But it's also like a learning experience because it's like, it'll take me a long time. It'll take me a decade or 2 decades to really
hone the skill in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's something that is appealing to me because I get to practice working a process on a long time scale to get where I'm trying to go, but I get to do it in a fun way. I get to practice it in a fun way that I can then translate over to, you know, business. That's really why I do it. But anyway, we don't have to get too deep into that. But
I dig it.
Yeah. So if you want to check out my really boring grape growing and wine making videos, that you probably wouldn't get much value from my business YouTube, but that one might be interesting enough to people. And then Twitter, I don't just tweet about work stuff, but I tweet a lot, mostly about work stuff.
Yeah.
So
it's funny stuff. Like I said, that interaction between you and Tanner Joy about, he's like, don't buy Amazon packages. And you said, yes, as long as you buy them from me or my affiliates or whatever. And so, yeah, there's something to that. So, dude, Richard, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
This has been good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Way too long in the making, but this is.
Well, we'll get to the next one faster then.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Folks, thanks so much for watching Timonspodcast. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.